Hey everybody, it's Angel from Halo Inspirations. We give you inspirations to help you spread beauty and joy through your quilting journey. It's Wednesday. Happy hump day to each of you. Another inspiration to follow. So what is this week? This week, as the title of the video is, it's a cathedral window pillow. This is a small sample of a cathedral window. And you know, it's usually the windows are a lot smaller. This is typically hand stitched. It's a very old block. Okay, I'm not sure when it all got started history wise, but it is an older block that used to be hand stitched a lot. And you can still hand stitch it, but y'all know me. I try to avoid hand stitching. So I'm putting a little bit of a modern twist with it. There are several ways to do this on the sewing machine. I'm going to show you one of my favorite methods this week. So there's that side of being a little bit modern. But also because mine are larger, that's another modern twist, making them bigger than smaller, because they're usually a lot smaller than this. And they were typically done with muslin or white or off-white fabric and then having the color all inside. I put another twist to it and I did two pillows, one using a gray solid and the other one using blacks. Now I want to tell you, if you'll notice, I know it's hard to see, but I'm going to tell you there's no batting, okay? So no batting for this project. We have done so many quilts for the last year, and we have all either been quilting away on our quilt tops or we're sending them off. This is a project that does not require batting. Can I get a thumbs up? Absolutely. Okay. So, but the modern side of it then is that we have a darker color fabrics. Oh, and that's where I was going to take y'all. All of it that I have, that I did for this project, was done with my stash and my crumbs. So let me show you what I've made. So I've got two of them, like I said. The first one is done in a gray with some pinks and reds and various different colors inside, but this gray is it's granite by Kona, and I absolutely love it. And it makes a modern twist, seeing that it's not off-white or a muslin, but a darker solid color with the bright inside. The windows here, these are all your windows, okay? The second one that I did, and those were all in my stash, okay? I did not buy anything for this. The other thing that I did was a black with crumbs. Those blocks are all crumbs. I'll throw a picture up of both of these so that y'all can see them better, but these are all my crumbs that I built those blocks with, or those windows. So I had a lot of fun doing some crumb piecing. So what kind of stuff are we going to need for this project? Well, the first one, for this gray or black, for the background, and I matched the back of with an envelope. All of the gray, I used granite, like I said, Kona. And you're going to need to, if you're not using what you have on hand, because you can mix and match it too. It doesn't have to be the same color. Your creativity can go wild with this. So if you were doing it with the gray or a similar background, and you're cutting from yardage, it'd be 1.25 yards for just the top, okay? And you'll need to cut 9 12.5-inch squares, okay? And for the black one, again, for just the topper, you'll need 9 12.5-inch squares of a black, and I use black Kona, okay? With a little bit of, there is a print in here for one row because I realized I didn't have enough, so I just pulled an extra black. I don't even know what it is, to be honest. I think it's Wilmington Prints I think they call it sparkles or something. Can't get it right now. So it was in my stash. So I just used that. But again, it'd be 1.25 yards. Both granite, well, granite Kona right now is in our shop. So the link for that is down below. I'll just send it right here in text, but it is down, the link for that is down below. And it's granite Kona. I do have that currently in the shop. The black was just shipped yesterday. Now they tell me Thursday or tomorrow, but that ain't gonna happen. We all know better. So it's coming for jet black premium Kona. It's coming. It'll be in the shop later. For the backing, I went ahead and matched my backing to my topper background. You'll need another 3/4 yard, okay, if you cut in a certain way, okay? And I talk about that near the end. So 3/4 yard. For the windows, okay, for these windows, they're 3.5 inch squares is what these are. And I just used various different fabrics, but if you were pulling from one fabric, it would be 1/4 yard, okay? For the black one, like I said, I did crumb piecing, and you can check out that video to learn how to do some crumb piecing, but that's all this was, so that was total scrap, okay? Then you'll also need thread, and I highly recommend that you match your thread. Now I have, on both of these, I used Aurifil 50 weight for the whole kit and caboodle. For the gray, to match the granite, it's called Smoky Gray, also found in the shop. And for the black, I used a black Aurifil thread, also in the shop. So if you're looking for any of those, it's all in there for you. You can just go and shop away. So you want to try and match. If you're doing a white background, you want to use a white. I would encourage a white, something that matches, okay? Whatever color you decide to do. For the different feet, I actually used my 1/4 inch foot with my guide, because it's not really a 1/4 inch. My open toe foot, and I ended up using my walking foot for the demo because it made a lot of sense at the end. So those are the 3 feet. The open toe, you might even, I really do suggest, and I talk about it later, but an open toe really does help to be able to see what you're doing. But again, no batting, right? I just want to keep saying that. There's no batting. The other thing you'll need if you're doing the same size quilt top or pillow that I am, it's an 18-inch pillow form. So I had 2 of those. Now those weren't in my stash or my, none of that. I had to go buy them. But I did use an 18-inch pillow form. So you'll need one of those if you decide to make this into a pillow. But that's all the necessary supplies. We're going to have a little fun putting a modern twist to a beautiful old block, the Cathedral window. So let's go ahead and get this started. So the first step, of course, after you've cut 9 of your, mine are 12.5 inches. So if you want that same look, they're 12.5 inches. And you're going to just simply fold them in half, okay? And once you line up those ends, you're basically going to stitch 1/4 inch from the raw edge to the fold on each side. Now I've already done that right here. And I went ahead and back stitched both at the raw edge and at the fold, okay? But you want 2 lines. And I would use a thread that matches well with your fabric. I used red so that you'll be able to see things as we go along. But once you have both of those seams, 1/4 inch from the raw to the fold, you're then going to take it and make a little square, okay? And the idea is where those 2 seams that you sewed together, you're going to want to go ahead and nest those seams together, okay? Keeping that edge as straight as possible, Once you do have those seams nested, I personally would pin them because it's kind of a weird situation here with getting it straight. And one way I look, I would see if your pins are lining up straight with your line in the back. If they're not, do not hesitate to pull them apart. And that's why I put this down on the table, making this neat little square, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to line up those seams a good distance, you know, a couple inches worth, so that I know that I'm going to be straight. And I pin on the right of the seam and the left of the seam. That one's a little crooked. Yep, it sure is. That's better. But you basically want to just pin on either side. So at this point, we're going to stitch this line together, okay? So this is where we've nested our seams. Okay, these seams on the outside are what we already did. So, and we're going to leave a little gap after we pass that seam we're creating. After those nested seams, we're going to leave a little gap, and I'm going to show you that. But you want to make sure that you're as straight as possible. Get that fold underneath your needle. Okay, go ahead. I'm going to back stitch. And at some point, we're just going to stop. You're going to do a little back stitch. Come back just where how many stitches you did. Now, it's best at this point that we're going to leave about a couple inches, and it's real important that you don't go too small, because when we go to turn this thing inside out, which is the next step, the small hole will make it really difficult. And I was finding that my measurements weren't so great, and I was struggling for a little bit. So I actually just grab a ruler. I put the tip of the ruler down about where that needle is. I go ahead, lift the needle. I'm going to put my finger about the 2-inch. It doesn't have to be exact. I just don't want to be too small. Okay. And then I'm going to lift my presser foot, and I'm going to slide my finger and my fabric that couple of inches. Again, it does not have to be exact, but I needed something to give me a reference because mine were too small. At that point, you are going to lower your presser foot. When you get it about a couple inches later, lower your presser foot, put your needle down, do a little back stitch, because we need to support these ends so that when we turn it, they don't come undone. Those stitches don't come undone, because we're going to manipulate it. And I do back stitch at the fold too. Okay. All right. I'm going to clip off my leader ender at this point, and this is what you have. You basically have a square. Okay. Now we do have the jump stitch, is what that's called. So I did not cut threads. You very well can, but I've got a jump thread right here. If you do it this method, it's very important that you take your snips or your scissors and you cut those jump threads. I do it close to the edge of each back stitch so that I'm left with nothing in between on both sides. Because if you leave those jump stitches on there, it will make it hard for you to do the next step, which is what? At this point, you're just going to simply take it and turn it inside out. Now, I didn't mention this at the beginning, and I should have. When you fold your initial 12.5-inch square, when you're folding it together, you're going to want to put those right sides together. So the wrong sides, if it matters, I'm using a solid fabric, so it doesn't matter. But if you were using a printed fabric, you'd want the pretty sides on the inside, okay? So that's important. And this is why, because we are going to turn it inside out. Now you're going to want to do this with each of your squares, okay? If you use 12.5 like I did, you do 9 of these. I did chain piece all of that, but for video purposes, to speed this up a little bit, I did not. So you don't have to worry about that hole. It's going to be on the inside. We do not have to stitch it closed. So it does help to have some kind of a, I'm using the purple thing, but some kind of a tool to get those points nice and pretty. Now I will say some people like to, before they turn it inside out, they like to do an angle before the seam line and just snip off some bulk. I didn't find it necessary, so I didn't do it. This works out just perfectly fine. It's not enough, in my opinion, to worry about. So you just want to get all those corners poked, and I'm going to show you here. All right. Get it nice and pretty. Got some bling. And then you'll have your points all nice and pretty. Now remember, you can see my hole right now, and that it's okay. We're not going to close it. It's going to be fine. It's on the inside of your quilt. So I'm going to take you to the pressing board. I'm going to bring you in closer for that, and I'm going to demonstrate how to get this thing nice and prettily pressed. And really, that next part is going to help build a little topper for us by the end of this. So the next step is pressing. So I'm going to take you to the pressing board. I'll be there in just a sec. Okay, I thought I'd bring you in just to show you that jump stitch again. So I have the two seams here that I sewed first from raw edge to fold, back stitching at each end, and then I nested and pinned these seams together. Okay, and what you'll see is here's actually where I did my, where I actually did my jump stitch. So I did not cut threads. I just lifted the needle, moved the fabric, did a back stitch before, a back stitch after, and kept going. So now I have this extra thread here. I got it on this side too. It is on both sides, okay? So what ends up happening if you try to do this inside out, these stitches will snug. So let me get this straight here for you. Get it underneath the camera. And I just basically snipped on each side. Okay, so I have an extra thread here. Go to the other side, snip here and here. Okay, so you are left with your square that this is your hole that you're actually going to make it go outside in, outside out, whatever, inside out, however you want to phrase it. But that's where the hole that you're going to pull. And because we did those back stitches, it helps to lock those stitches in. All right, so here's one that I did. It's outside in. Here's my hole. We do not have to stitch this closed. It's not a necessary. Okay, now we're on my pressing board at this point. I have pushed out all my corners, and the first thing I like to do is just kind of hit the corner. Now you got to make sure that your iron is hot when you do this. A hot iron is really good. And I just basically hit those 4 corners first, and then you're going to press from the middle out. Now you don't want a whole bunch of squigglies. You don't want to go like this too much, okay? Because these edges are kind of biasy, okay? So you're just going to want to make it flat. And if you feel like you need to, you can flip it over. Hit those corners again. And then simply press all the outsides. Nice, even, slow. And that will be, and if you notice, it's really hard to see where my hole is. Oh, it's down here. See, even I have trouble. So that's the first pressing. All right, and you're going to want to do that to all 9 of your blocks. Now the next step, I actually do use pins. I found it easier to utilize them, but the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to bring this first corner to the center, and I take a pin. I found it to be a lot easier, and I just stick it in there. And it's anchoring this triangle. Okay, so it gives me an opportunity to press this down. Okay, and then I will do that to the next one. Take a little pin, hold it for me. Got a nice point coming down here, and I'm just going to simply take my iron and press it. Okay, and you're going to want to do this to all 4 corners coming to the center, and another pin. Okay, and another press. Okay, and then last but not least, that last corner, bring it on in. Take your pin, put it right in the center. So now I have 4 pins, all helping, and I'm just going to give it a simple press. Now if I was really worried, there we go, about pressing that center. Now this is hot, so I would let it cool first because it does hurt. But I'd pull out all 4 pins. And if you notice, I was trying to hold that center down because they will flip. This is why I suggested that you do some, what do you call that? Spray starch with your fabric, because the more it's spray starched, the easier this actually becomes. So I just press it, giving it one good last press, and I will let that cool, all of them. I do all 9, and I will let them all cool so that the fabric doesn't go back to the way it was. I let them all cool, and you could leave the pins in there if you wanted to cool, but you want to let this cool, okay? And then we'll go to the next step. So I'm going to rearrange everything so that you can see how we start to put these things together. Okay, so after you've done your 9 blocks like this, now we're going to start to assemble them together. And there's a little bit of a trick to it. So I have 2 already done here. I'm going to add it. You're making 3 by 3, so 3 rows of 3 blocks. So we're going to put this one together. You'll need some pins and possibly a marking tool. That would be up to you, and I'll show you here. So we want to put these first together, okay? And when you do this, yes, you want to try and get your points lined up. That helps to make things a little more centered. So I'm going to pin it here. But the most important parts are the points down here that you want to make sure are together. So you flip it over. And basically when we're doing this, I don't know if you'll be, yeah, you can see it. There's a line right here that you're going to stitch on. Okay. But we want to get these points together. All right. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and pin on each side so that they don't move, because that would not be good. No shifting today. Interesting how I did those different, but just want to make sure that my points are lined up. Okay. Now, I'm going to have a hard time seeing this line underneath the light of my machine. So I'm going to take my marking tool, and if it was a dark fabric, like I used black in the one, I would use my Ultimate marking pencil. And I absolutely love this. It's from Full Line Stencils. It irons off. It's wonderful. You can find those in my shop, but this is white, so that ain't gonna work. And you don't have to be exact. It's just trying to give you a guide. And I'm just basically using, this is an air and water soluble marking tool. And it will go away in time. And it won't come back. So I just give myself, it's just a guide. That's all this is, just a guide, okay? And then we come and we take it to the sewing table or sewing machine. All right. Oh, and before we do that, this is always helpful. Right now, I do have a clear 1/4 inch foot, but believe it or not, I still had a lot of trouble seeing. So I'm going to change my foot to an open toe foot, okay? So I'm going to do that real quick. This way I can really see well. I tried it the other way. It did not work for me. It might work for you if yours is clear, but you will need this later on also. All right, from here on out, it's going to be about that open toe foot. And then you're just going to basically slide this underneath your needle and stitch. Now I will do, again, a back stitch. I didn't hang on to that thread, so you know I got a nest. I'm going to back it up. I'm going to go ahead and pull out that pin, just like so. All right. And just simply sew it through. Now, again, I would not use red thread on white fabric. You want to try and match the fabric or the thread to the fabric. Now notice I'm off that line because my line's not completely straight. Remember, I just drew a very generalized guide, and I'm allowing my fabric to just go straight through. Whew, cut my finger there in a minute, right underneath that needle bar. I don't know how many times I've done that. I don't know about y'all, but it can smart. Do a little back stitch at the end. I'm going to go ahead and cut threads. All right. And this is what we have. Okay, take this pin out. I'm going to go ahead and cut the thread tail. We're going to open it up, and there we have it. Again, now we have, I've added on, so I have 3 going across. All right, and now we need to add those 3 to another 3 and eventually the 9. We're just putting 9 together, 3 by 3. And you do this the exact same way, okay? But this time, we're gonna line up along this line right here, okay? And you want to pin where you sew. So what that means is I'm pinning along this line and not down in here, because that's not going to do me any good. I want these points to be staying put. It's not going to do any good if I put a pin here and it still shifts on top. And again, I can't see this line underneath my needle, so I'm just going to simply give myself a guide. And you could use a ruler if you wanted to. I don't find it necessary. I really just want that guide. Okay. And all a guide means is it's giving you some direction. You want to allow your material to sew straight and not be so worried. And if you get off canter, don't do a real sharp turn because you'll have a jiggy jag. I want to make sure everything's not flipped up on top. Okay, I'm going to pull this under my needle and I'm going to give it a sew. I hope I don't hit the camera. It's right in the way. All right, and remember to try and pull those needles out if you're a needle out puller. I know some people don't. And this time I'm gonna lower my needle with my hand. So I want that point right on there. All right, there we go. And just simply stitch. At the end, do a little back stitch and cut threads. All right, and this is what we got. Let me go ahead and snip this. Pull out pins. And open her up. And it looks like a whole bunch of flippy floppy. All right. The next step, where all of these little areas are open, okay, we're going to need to sew them down. We're going to have to tack them. Now I taught you a jump stitch earlier. If you've never heard the term, we called it a jump stitch because we didn't break threads and we just jumped along the fabric. Well, now we're going to learn another possible term. It might not be new to you. It was new to me. It's bar tacking. And basically we're going to take a zigzag stitch. We're going to make the length of the stitch. My machine will only go down to 2.0. So if you can go down further and it works for you, I would suggest getting a piece of material and putting it underneath your needle and experiment with this, because the width I'm going to do, this time I'm going to do a 0.4. I might go back up to 0.5. That's what I've done in the past, but I have issues with that sometimes. So the width is 0.4 and the length is, as far as mine will go, is a 2.0. And we're just going to, let me get this out. We're just going to put a cross. So basically I'm going to start here and I'm going to come across and end here. Then I'm going to start here and I'm going to come across and end here. And that's going to tack this down. Now a bar tack you'll see a lot like on a pair of jeans where the zipper, where it comes down, and it's just a support and it keeps it locked in there and tacked down, and it doesn't look horrible. Now if you're matching threads, you will see it, but you can't tell good or bad. Being red, you're going to see everything. Lots of fun here. So we're going to do a bar tacked on each of these squares that need to be put together. Okay, so of course this part is sewn, but here we need to do the bar tack. Okay, the bar tack stitch, and we're just going to get it done in there. Now the other key, the other tip I'm going to tell you, and this is from experience, you don't want it to be too long. Now I've heard a 1/4 inch and that was actually too long. So I'm going to start right about here. As long as it holds it together and it's not too long, you want it as short as you can go and still hold it together, because if you go too long, you're going to have problems with your points when we do the window part, okay? Which is be the next step. But first, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to sew one of these with you so you could actually see it. And then I'll finish the rest of these off camera. And we'll come back to that next step. But in the meantime, I'm going to pull you to the sewing machine. Now I have my open toe foot on, which is perfect. All right, and I'm actually going to turn this so it doesn't hit the camera. All right, so I'll lift this up. Now a good idea, if you don't have a stiletto, grab your seam ripper because you're going to need it. I'm grabbing the purple thing. This is one of the best tools I ever invested in. I have a stiletto too, I just always forget to pull it out. So, and this is not real sharp, so it doesn't pierce anything. All right, so remember, you don't want it too long, and I hope I don't, but I'm going to go ahead and change my stitch, a zigzag stitch. I'm going to lower, my stitch length to as low as it'll go, which is 2.0, and I'm going to lower my stitch width to 0.4, hoping that it does okay. If not, I'll adjust it for the next one. If, like I said, you are matching your threads, it won't look as bad. Because remember, I'm using red. This is crazy. All right, so I'm going to lower this down. All right. I'm going to lower my needle. Now it takes a little bit, so I am going to speed the video up here too, because you'll sit here for a while. Because of that stitch length being so low and the stitch width, for some reason my tension changed. Okay, it will take a little bit, but I want you to see what I do. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start. What'd you know? I broke thread. It happens. It does happen. And it wasn't sliding very well, but that's okay too. Let me rethread. That was a lot of fun. All right, let's try that again. All right, this time I'm going to lower it a little far in so it overlaps a little bit. Okay, so here's the one I did with you. It's looking pretty sad. They got better and better, and what I did notice was 0.4 was too low. I went to a 0.5 on my width, and it worked much, much better. And you also don't want any drag when you're doing these stitches. It works much better if you lift your quilt top on top of your table so it doesn't drag, especially going through those stitches. It helps immensely, hence why these are looking a little better than those. However, it is what it is, right? We're working through this. Now again, if this was the same color, it doesn't show like this. It doesn't look anything like it. So I do encourage you to match your threads for that purpose. Now, if you were not using the 12.5-inch blocks like I did, let's say you used a layer cake and you did 10.5 and you wanted to know how big the windows that you need to cut are, you measure this part that you sewed, okay? Because this is where we're going to put our fabrics, okay? And I'm going to show you that in just a bit, but I wanted to mention that you go ahead and you measure these blocks. Mine are about 4 1/8, so I would go to 3 3/4. You can do a 3.5. I have, but you would know you would go about a quarter. No, you would go a 1/2 inch less. Let me do that again. You would do a 1/2 inch less. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So somewhere between 3.5 and 3 5/8 is for this one. I actually did 3.5s, and I'm going to show you that, but I also cut another one at 3 3/4. So let's say when you measured, you got 5. You would want to cut 4.5-inch blocks. Okay, that would be a much bigger block if this was 5. So let's take it down to 3.5. You would cut 3-inch. If you had a 3-inch block square measuring here, you would cut 2.5. That way y'all can do your own quilt sizes or your own pillow sizes and decide on that. But this is where the windows happen. Okay, so you would, this one's 3 3/4. So you would put everywhere that you have sewn seams, basically. Here's 3.5s. All the rest of these are 3.5s, and you would literally fill them up. It takes 12 of these, so 9 blocks that you fold and sew together, and then you cut 12 of the windows, whatever color you would like to do. You would cut those windows out to fill in these spots. Now, I will mention, and I'm going to pull in my pillow here for you so you can see it. You can add even more to the texture of your pillow. If you look at this black pillow, it's kind of hard to see because it's black, but I don't have any fabric up in here, okay? This is where I did the crumb piecing. So I just did 3.5-inch squares of crumb piecing. They didn't have to be perfectly shaped because you sew over them, but I don't have anything up here, and I didn't with the gray pillow either. If you really wanted to, you would take your blocks, so let's say 3.5-inch blocks here, and you cut them in half, and you would fill in these areas, okay, with those cut squares that you cut in half. And you'd want to take it all the way to the edge. If they go over a little, it's okay, because it'll go in the seam of your pillow. You just want to have some gap here, at least 1/4 inch of a gap going around. That's what you're looking for, okay? And you want to kind of get them centered. So what I do at that point, actually I'm going to show a couple of things. I'm going to work with this block. All right. So I'm going to pick all these rest of them up, but you would fill in all those spots. And then you can glue down this square, or you can even, which I did on all mine, I pinned them to hold them in place. Okay, let me pull this up here. So if you want to try and get these straight, you're going to line up your corners to your points and these corners to those points, and then you're simply going to pin it to hold it. Okay, now you don't have to do it this way, but I felt it worked a lot easier. These sides that we have open to us are on the bias, so they stretch. Yep, I'm going back down to 3.5. They stretch really, really easily across. So this is a 3.5-inch block inside my 4 1/8. All right, line them all up. Try to get it as centered as possible, and because these are on a bias, you can stretch this over. Okay, you could go further, you could go less. It is completely up to you how big you would want that. But what I do at this point is I actually press it. All right. And by doing that, it doesn't make it stay, but it gives it a nice, pretty crisp line. And then I pin it again. Okay, now you're going to have to watch out for this when you're sewing. I'm going to show you how we're going to sew this. But then I would do the next one. Okay. And I would press it again. And see, it won't stay. Now, you don't have to pin them either. You can just sit down on your sewing machine and start stitching. I just felt, I did do that, but I felt like this was easier. And you'd want to do this with all the blocks. Okay. And remember, it is hot, so you want to be careful. Get this pinned here. I'm going to do the last one here, and then we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch it down. Okay. Get this in here. And like I said, you don't have to pin the center, and FYI, I'm using silicone pins. They're called magic pins. They're heat resistant, so you can put the iron over it. Total blessing. All right, but you want to do this to all your blocks. You can do some at a time. You can do one row at a time. You can do one, you know, whatever it is that you feel comfortable with and you like to do, or how many pins you have, because we have 12 of these that we're going to have to stitch. But at this point, I'm going to take you to the sewing machine here, and I'm going to show you basically what we're going to do is we're going to sew, oh gosh, y'all, right along this edge. So 1/8 to 1/16 of an inch as best as we can along here. Now, I did use matching thread, so if I had wobbles, you wouldn't see them as well because I'm wobbly. If you're not wobbly and you like doing something different, you could put a different color thread here, and you'll see, because I'm about to do red. Gotta love it. You're gonna get to see all my stitches. So you just sew right along. Now you don't even have to do a straight stitch. You could actually use a decorative stitch in here instead also. I am doing a straight stitch. That's how I did the other 2 pillows. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue on and do a straight stitch about 1/16 to 1/8 just along this edge. That's where that open toe foot really comes in handy, because you're going to be able to see it. So let's get to the sewing machine here. And again, it will matter that you don't have drag. I can't promise you that I won't here because of the situation with the camera, but it's really advantageous if in fact you don't have any drag. All right, so I got my open toe still on here. I'm going to pull in my, trying not to get the extra in front of you and not have drag at the same time. All right, so I'm going to start over here, okay? And I'm going to try and keep that point. Let me get my glasses on. All right, I'm going to lower my presser foot right near the tip. Oh, and don't forget to change to a straight stitch from when we did the zigzag. I almost forgot. Trust me, how many times have I done that? Several. All right. Now again, it's always helpful if you have some kind of stiletto or your seam ripper or something that has a point, because you're going to need it. All right, I know I'm in the way for just a second. I will do my best to get out of the way in just a bit. I'm going to lower this needle down by hand. And as you can see, having this open toe really, really helps to be able to see where I'm stitching. Now, you can leave the pin in, you can take it out. You can't see it, but I'm pulling the pin out. All right, and I'm going to hold it. This is why I said you didn't have to pin going all the way around. I just felt it was easier, so this was my method. But you could just simply take it to the sewing machine and straight stitches on. We're going to go ahead and get this started. And you're basically going to turn your quilt top in the direction that you need to go to stitch along this edge. Okay, it's kind of fun, not gonna lie. I should have back stitched at the beginning. I got a little excited. And you're just gonna, I take it nice and slow. And if you'll notice, yeah, you can. I'm pushing this back some because when I'm gonna come around here, and actually I can tell that I am not liking exactly how that's falling, so I'm going to pull it over just a bit. And yeah, I'm using tweezers too, so I can grab like extra fingers, because I've got clumsy hands and they don't always like to work well. So if you'll notice, I'm holding it down with the stiletto here with the purple thing. If you get off track, I highly encourage that you do not jig-jag, okay? All right, so there is one. And actually, I can go just a tad bit further. All right, I'm going to keep the needle down. I'm gonna lift my presser foot so that I can spin my topper here, and it's in the way. I'll get it situated. You will see here in just a second. I've got a lot sitting in front of the camera, so it would be in front of you. And see how this came off a little bit? It really should have gone over that corner. And I didn't see it until I pulled it around because I've got this big honking camera in front of me. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull it more because, there we go. I'm gonna try and overlap that fabric. Now this one's not gonna be pretty. I can tell you that already. But we're gonna try and do this next one perfect. Now, whenever you're sewing, you wanna try and keep your everything flat, okay? You don't want a whole lot going on in bunching. All right. And we're gonna come back on top. Whoop. Don't want to go too far, and I'm going to turn it just a little. Get me on track here. All right, let's see how this, whoop, there you go. See, I came off a little bit, but you don't let that freak you out. Now, to be honest with you, if I was sewing this without you guys here, I would have ripped that last stitch. But we're going to keep going because the next one's going to be better. All right, pull some of this down. There we go. All right. Slow as you go. And you're going to see why I prefer to match my threads. I am a wobbly sewer. I'm going to switch my hand here. See if I can put my stiletto down. And I'm making sure this time I'm going over that. See if I get that out of your way. Over that corner. Right, see that? I'm going over that corner right in here. Okay? One more time. I'm going to fold it just a little bit more. Sorry, my hands are in the way, guys. I will move them, I promise. All right. We're just going to keep on slowly stitching around. All right, get right in there, okay? Now, I am again leaving the needle down. Now, if you don't have the needle down function and you don't want to mess with your hand wheel, you could cut threads at this point, resituate yourself and start over for the next arch. It does work. You do not have to do this function. I do think it makes life a lot easier. And then you just turn it again. All right, I'm going to pull out this pin. All right, now I'm going to go back over just a little. And it's nice that this arch is on a bias because it will pull out. All right, now I'm actually debating on hand wheeling it a couple of stitches, but we're going to try it. There we go. All right, it worked for now. All right, here we go, guys. Nice and slow. Easy as she goes. And I'll tell you, after a while, you sort of get into a rhythm, and it's actually quite relaxing. Let's see where I'm going to end up. Yeah, I need to pull it just a little bit. Where is the... Pull this over just a tad. Now, can you see that? You can. Right in here, okay, that's where that bar tack stitch is. If it was really long, it will disrupt your sewing. That's why I highly encourage you to be as short as possible, but still be able to tack it down, because we're using it as anchor, right? But if it was really long, it would be really hard for you to fold this where it needs to go. How easy as she goes. Literally, there is no rush. If you go too fast, you will see that it will be more wobbly than it needs to be. All right, now get in there, right at that point. All right, last one I'll do with you, and then I'm going to pull this out so you can see my wonderful wobbly stitches. But that way you can see how this window is going to take effect. And then I'm going to give you an idea about how I actually mapped it out. Pulling out the pin that was holding it down for me. I'm going to turn this a little more. All right. Put this down. Oh, beautiful. Okay. Coming up. Whoop. See, sometimes it's easier to hand wheel this part, but if not, if you want to just use your sewing machine, just take it nice and slow. Easy. Whoop, I got a little far off there. That's okay. Don't go crazy and make a compensation too quickly, because it'll put like a straight line in it. I'll get this out of the way. I'm good for now. It actually is, and at any point after the second one, you can pull out the middle one. And I'm telling you guys, it's actually very relaxing. And it's the one time I watch my needle. You know, I'm always telling y'all, don't watch the needle. Well, I watch it with this one. I'm going to pull this over just a bit. Whoop, got a little crazy. The turtle that today is going to win the race. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and do a quick back stitch. Try to get it straight. Normally I'd keep going, and I ended on, nope, that didn't work. I ended on the outside, but I'm going to show you that here in just a second. So let's cut the thread. It's always helpful. Yep. You can tell I'm not used to doing that. I kept going normally. I'm going to show you this though. Let's pull this out. All right. Here we go. So you can see that it starts to form this window. And when you put the next piece in, okay, we'll say right here, get that nice and centered, and you folded this over, you get that beautiful arcs, and you'll just have all of these windows. Now you see, truth be told, there's my wiggly sewing. However, when you match threads, you really can't see much of that, okay? Now, as far as the quilting plan, or as the stitching down, I actually started out doing an entire row, okay? So I might, we'll say I'm on this row, okay? I'll get all of these blocks pinned and pressed and pinned all the way across. I'd start here, come down this way, come up this way, come down this way, come up this way, come down this way, come down again, come down, go this way and fill in all the rest of the way across, and I can end here. Okay, this part will be in your seam allowance when you go to put the back of the pillow on. This is going to be in your seam, so you won't see when you do back stitches up here if you need to. Okay, so then, to be honest, we would have this one, these two done, pressed and done. We would have another row, okay, which is only has two. So I'm going to go ahead and I would go it now. This one would be finished, so I would go ahead and do this one, press and pin, this one, press and pin, press and pin all of this, press and pin all of this, press and pin these ones on the outside, okay? And here's what I do. I start here this time. So here, here, like this, out, stop. Come back in, here, come in all the way back, and stop, okay? Now, if you're really adventurous, you could keep going from here. If you already had this row done, you could just keep going. You come around this way, come around this way, come around this way, right? And then back again. You could really map this out where you didn't have many needle stops or thread cuts. So it's all of what you're comfortable with, but that is the next step. So you're going to need to press and pin all your windows inside and get them all stitched down to make them beautiful and pretty again, and get those beautiful points, okay? And then we turn this into a pillow. Now mine is an 18-inch pillow, like I said before. So I'm working with those measurements. So when I show you about cutting backing for it, it's based off of those measurements. So I'm going to go ahead and take you to a bigger area for me to work with so you can see on how to get this backing on. So I'll see you guys in just a second. So I am doing an envelope backing for the pillow, and I'm not using this particular fabric because I've done something to speed things up, but I have a couple of methods to show you. This first one here, I have cut a 24-inch strip with the fabric. So my salvages are up here, and I cut 24 inches wide, okay? Why 24? We are working with an 18-inch pillow form, so I'd have an 18-inch pillow, correct? Well, understanding that, I want to do an envelope, and you'll see this in a little bit, but I'm going to overlap the backs by 6 inches. So I took the 18 and I added 6. That gave me 24. Now you can do that with any size pillow form and any size overlap. So for instance, if you had a 12-inch pillow form and you wanted to overlap by 4 inches, you would take the 12 inches plus the 4 and cut a 16-inch strip with the fabric, okay? So we're going to turn this, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut off my salvages. Now again, I'm not using this fabric, so I'm not too crazy and worried about it being straight and on, but you would if you were doing this exact method. Okay, cut the salvages off, throw those somewhere. The next thing I will do is I will open it up, okay? And what, at this point, we are working with that 18-inch pillow form. So I'm going to take my 24 inches and I'm going to cut two 18-inch pieces, okay? See if I can find the 18 under here, okay? Find it up on top. And I would simply give it a cut. Now remember, I'm not going to be too crazy about being accurate right now because I'm not going to use these. I just want to demonstrate how to do it. So there's one. Whoop. There's one 18 by 20 by 24. Had to think about it. All right. Then I'm going to take the next piece and I'm just going to make this easy on myself. Put these up here. Move this out of the way. Move this down. Cut another 18 inches. Okay. Oop, moving everything. Hope I didn't hit the camera. All right, give it another cut. So now I have two 18 by 24. How did I know that was going to happen? All right. And what I'm going to do, 18, I'm going to fold this right sides together. This will give me 18 by 12, and I would do the same thing with the other one. I would give it a good press, give myself a nice solid line. Now this method I learned from Kimberly Jolly as far as like using the fold, and I guess she learned it from Lori Holt. I had to come up with the math, but I would take this to the sewing machine and I would do a stitch along this 18-inch line, okay? So we would have one, and you could do a decorative stitch, you could just do a regular stitch, but I did about a 1/2 inch in, and you're going to see that in a little bit. But you would have two of them. Right sides are out, so wrong sides are together. I don't know what I was thinking. You want the right side to be out when you do this, the pretty side, okay? And I would have, then again, you would press this. You wouldn't have to stitch this one, okay? But you would lay it down. I need to see the numbers. I would overlap this by 6 inches, be 21, and this would be the one with my decorative stitch, but let's just see. There we go. It fits. All right, well, this is what I actually did do. And at this point, well, here, let me just show you. Using the same concept, just a little different. I'm doing the envelope still, but that's how you would cut from your yardage. Now, I didn't want to do all that math, so let me show you what I did. I actually cut two 18-inch strips out of my yardage. Just salvage. These are my salvages. Folded it, pressed it, two of them. One of them, I did a decorative stitch. Now this is just a regular stitch, a 1/2 inch in. Went ahead and did that. On the pillows, I actually did do a decorative stitch, and if the picture will show, I will put it here so that you can see what I did, but it's a 1/2 inch in, and there'll be a right side and a wrong side, or whatever side you would like the stitching to show. If you have a preference over one versus the other, you will have that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down the, nope, I'm not. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down the one without the decorative stitch, okay? And then I'm going to overlap this one with the decorative stitch on top on the side that I want to show, facing up. So, and then I'm going to overlap them by about 6 inches. Now notice I got all this extra fabric. It's okay because I just cut 2 18-inch strips to do this. No math required. I didn't want a lot of thinking before. And then you're going to take your topper and you're going to lay it down on top. Now you will notice that it's just slightly under. It actually measures out currently, and not all of these things are sewn in, right? It's currently 17 7/8. It's shrunk just a little bit with some of the stitching, which is fine. It's okay if you're smaller by a little bit because it'll help fill out the pillow. It's going to be a little wobbly if it's bigger. So, but you line this up, you put it on top, and then I just simply line up my edges. Make sure this is somewhat straight. Okay, I'm going to cut here. Whoop. Got kind of the pillow a little bit too, which is fine. It's going to be in the seam. Okay, there's one. Go to the other side. Line that up. Oh, this is hard. You should not do this. I don't want to hurt myself. Okay. Nope, didn't get all the way through. Still didn't get all the way through. Let's just speed this up a little bit. It's right on that edge. Okay. Whoop. All right. And then I would do the same with the top. Dang it. You know, I probably need a new blade. Is probably what this is telling me. But with COVID, I'm hanging on. Okay. And then I would do it down here again. Oh, but I really don't have much. All right. At this point, what I would do, since I have it all ready to go, I would take a ruler with a 1/4 inch corner, and I'm just going to make a couple of marks. Okay. And these are marks so I know where to turn. They're 1/4 inch in. So as I'm sewing around, I am going to stop and pivot, which I'll show you in a bit. And I'm going to do this off camera, but at this point I would go ahead and pin all the way around. You're going to sew all the way around. The envelope is inside, so you'll still be able to turn it inside or outside in, or out in, whatever it is, right? Inside out. So you're going to sew all the way around. So I'm going to take you in and just do that stitch real quick. But before I do, off camera, I'm going to put pins all along here so it doesn't move. And then I will be ready to stitch. So I'll see you guys in just a sec. All right, all the pins are on. I have my walking foot on. I did decide to put a walking foot on because we're going through like 6+ layers of fabric. To be honest with you, I didn't use a walking foot with the actual pillows that I showed y'all earlier, and I'm going to show you again here in a minute. But I know that it'll make it a lot easier. So walking foot with a 1/4 inch is what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead with a 1/4 inch, and I'm going to just get this started. I will oh, it's moving it because my pins are sticking way out. Speed the video up so it won't take as long. But let's get this show on the road. I'm still using red thread. All right, here we go. I am going to go ahead and do a back stitch. Okay, so I showed y'all those little corners that I took the ruler and I marked a 1/4 inch square in the corner. This is where it becomes helpful. I can never measure correctly. So I'm going to go right to that mark and I'm going to lift. Whoops, no I'm not. Where now we have to back stitch. Okay, I'm going to lift my presser foot and I'm going to give it a turn. Move my pins a little closer. And I'm just going to keep on going. Put the presser foot down. That's always helpful. Okay, coming up to the last corner. I'm going to give it a nice spin. I'm going to overstitch. I'm going to do a little back stitch just to secure it. Cut threads. Woo! And we are done. Now, because my envelope is in the back where I have that hole, this is where I have the opportunity to turn this outside to outside. Okay. I get really excited. This is a fun part. All right. And I would at this point take that, whatever you use to push, oh, you know, before you do this, you probably, it is a good idea on your corners. Let me pull one out. So right where the stitches are in that corner, you can do a little snip. Just make sure you don't cut the threads okay, and get rid of that extra bulk. I didn't do that earlier because it just didn't matter one way or the other when we were folding them. There wasn't enough there, but I did do it with the pillows at this point. We'll see. But if you have, I'm using the purple thing again. It works really, really well. And you just want to sit and pull out or push out your corners so that they get nice and pretty and pointy. And it helps not to have as much bulk in there. But I'll do one more with you, and then I'm going to talk about one other thing. Well, we're almost there, guys. Now, I didn't cut this one. Let's see what it looks like. That's why I wanted to do it with you. Let's see what the difference is. So before you turn it inside out, which is never too late, you can just go back and turn it the way it was if you forget, like I just did. Yeah, it's a little different. It is more rounded. So I have a point on this side. It's hard for you to see because of the material, but on this side it's more rounded. So it does help to snip those corners. But you'll want to do that to all four. Give it a good snip. Get rid of some of that bulk. Okay. Push all your corners out, whether it's with your fingernail, whether it's your tool that you use, whatever it is that you like to do. Go ahead and put your pillow form in. Now, once you're done and you take a peek, before you put your pillow form in, I would, if you want to do buttons, this would be the time to do it, okay? Got bling everywhere. Flatten out this backing. And I really like this folded idea because it gives a little more stability to the pillowcase. You know, doing the 2-layer fold makes it easier, so I don't have to use a hot ruler or anything to make sure I'm getting a nice even fold at the end of the fabric. But it does use a little more, so you do have to take that in consideration. Now, there would be the pillow. Okay, now at this point, like I said, if you want to do buttons, so I put on heart buttons on this gray and pink and red one, and on the black one I put those black buttons just for some added texture and feature, and this is my favorite. So, and these were made exactly the same way as what I showed you today. So I really do hope that this was inspirational. If you have any questions or comments, suggestions, we love hearing from you, and you know that I will respond. But I'm so glad that y'all stopped by. I hope this was inspirational. I hope you give the cathedral window an absolute chance. You could not do this inside of a pillow covering. You could not do the back layer and have a table runner or a quilt. You could do a quilt in this whole side. Just keep on adding those squares, and there's no batting. This is it. This is all she wrote. So it makes it a very fun, and you know, you don't have to worry about quilting it because all the quilting is in the window. So again, if you like this video, go ahead and like. I hope to see you guys at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Facebook. Link for that is down below. I'll be there for any quilting or questions and answers or comments, or, you know, just a time for us to just chit chat about this for a little bit. I hope to see you there today. Would love to see you. But until next week, guys, which is another project that doesn't have batting. looking forward to that. It was something I had found, I don't know, month and a half, 2 months ago, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. Another level of inspiration for you. But until next week, may y'all continue to be inspired, productive, and ever so joyful, and never stop making y'all's dreams in quilting come true. I love y'all. See y'all soon. Happy quilting.